This episode of The Dog Show features Marta Roca. Marta is the founder of Four&Sons. Throughout history, dogs have played many roles, from comrades-in-arms to companions at our heels. Four&Sons have added Muse to that list. Established in 2013, Four&Sons is the first and only print and online publication dedicated to dog-centric art, culture, and lifestyle. Chronicling the work of interesting people and their interesting dogs, Four&Sons is a guided tour through the worlds of art, photography, music, design, literature, even maths, as inspired by man's best friend. In the interview, we talk about dogs in art, what they symbolize, how they depict cultural generations, and how Marta harnesses a dog's magic powers to tell stories of art and culture at Four&Sons. Marta, welcome to the Dog Show today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be lots of fun, actually. We were just having a chat before we started recording, and I had to stop you because all of the things you were saying were so interesting, and it's a very different conversation than what I've had with anyone else before. So I'm really excited to have a chat with you today. I guess I usually start by asking my guests about their dogs, but from what I understand, you don't have a dog of your own, which is interesting for someone that has a brand all about dogs. But I'd like to hear about what your favorite dog breed is.
You see, I had to ask this one. I had to think about this one because it kind of changes, and I think it's because I live vicariously so much through the magazine that I fall in and not out of love, but I fall especially in love with a breed depending on what we're working with. But if I had to choose one, it would have to be a beagle. Maybe it's because of Snoopy, like that's one of my first dog loves. Maybe it's because it's like super curious, which is something I kind of relate to. I like the stubbornness as well. Eats a lot. I love food. So I don't know. It's like I find them like super cheeky. So yes, but I mean seriously, like it's kind of super hard to really choose the one. But yeah.
I don't have a lot to do with beagles, but I do love the way they look. They're a beautiful looking dog. The big floppy ears and all that kind of stuff is very like iconic, right? So,
yes, exactly. It's a very doggy dog. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you then draw your inspiration for your creative work? Where do you draw that inspiration from if you don't have a dog of your own? Is it other people's dogs? Are you kind of on Instagram? Where are you drawing that inspiration from?
Well, in fact, I mean, and without sort of wanting to get too heavy too early in the conversation, like I fell in love with the whole idea of dog as a kind of like it's the bond that humans we have with dogs that fascinates me. Like that's the thing that kind of keeps me engaged and it keeps me trying to understand. So it's sort of dogs to me represent a lot of universal truths, when you start working with a concept of dogs from a creative point of view, very quickly you just fall into like conversations about, the big things in life, like trust and loyalty and companionship. And so all of that is just that we channel it from a creative point of view with a bit of a creative lens. But really the inspiration comes from like this connection, the human connection between dogs and us, and how we just seem to, have these super strong bonds that are sort of hard to explain but very easy to feel. So that's where the inspiration comes from all this kind of wonderful magic that happens between these two species.
I love how you put that, and it's something that I hadn't thought a lot about before, but obviously there's this kind of innate connection that we, like dog lovers, have with dogs, especially their own dogs. And while you could, all those words you use, like companionship and trust and all of that, I guess are the simple ways to describe it. There's so much complexity as well.
Exactly, exactly. And that is kind of how the magazine has been evolving because every time we sort of feel that okay, we got it, we understand it now. Like someone, especially like first, first experience will come and like bring a whole different perspective into this. And I think that creativity and art and photography are such a great platforms to explore all of this. And it sort of helps put things into maybe not words, but even like just experiences. So culture and art and creativity are like like a really nice way to explore all of these great concepts. And dogs are beautiful. So from a visual point of view, they just make it absolutely fabulous for anyone that has got a creative to be able to explore those things.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit cheesy, but a picture really does tell a thousand words, right? I mean, art and culture and the way you represent
Yeah.
those things can tell more of a story than just words themselves. So, um, with I guess
Yes, yes.
with Four&Sons, I'm not going to be able to give it justice by talking on a podcast, but there's some amazing blend of art and culture and dogs and everything that you're doing. I mean, if you just someone just goes to your Instagram page or your website, it's very impactful, immediately impactful. What got you in? Where did it all start, and what got you into this industry?
So I was talking with a really good friend of mine who she is actually the godmother of the project, for use of a better word. She's like super passionate about dogs. She is like at the time she had a gorgeous, gorgeous poodle called Walter, and we were talking about we wanted to do something together. And when we started to talk about which things really get us going, um, both dogs and culture were kind of overlapping in the conversation.
Mm.
Um, so we just kind of, it was one of those aha moments, of like, hey, no one is really exploring like the beauty of like dogs and what they mean to us, but with a creative contemporary lens. And we just kind of look at each other and we thought, well, let's just snoop around. Oh, sorry, I probably am gonna do a few, you know, dog puns by accident. So, but that's what happened. We just started to like search, and we realized that there was so much beautiful stuff out there that had not been really well. We didn't realize that if it really had not been explored and put together in one kind of package. And that was the start. And then I just couldn't stop really. And that was like
Mm.
about 5 6 years ago now, actually longer, 7 years ago now. So and it's just changes because this culture changes, the way we interact with dogs changes, the way that we represent them changes.
Mm.
So it's constantly moving, which is, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is a very unique way to represent that relationship as well. It's not something that I mean, your brand in particular is very unique. I've not seen something else like that in my kind of experience looking around. So I mean, that's I guess a credit to you in the way that you've put that together as well. But I guess when it comes to artwork, historically, what do dogs represent when it comes to art?
Well, I think that in a way, what's interesting in the way that other things do in through history, they do actually represent the relationship we've had with them. So like if you're thinking about like I don't know classical paintings and the dog is like hunting with the master, and that was probably the relationship that a lot of people had with dogs because only probably like upper class could afford to feed dogs and things like this, or people who had dogs as protection. So that was another way of representing. So it's basically been changing. Art kind of sort of mirrors the way that we actually interact with dogs, the kind of role they have in our lives. So you see now like the things that we see photographers exploring with dog photography, for example, are probably connected to things that are happening, in society right now. So from, the issue of like rescuing dogs, obviously like things about safety, things about companionship, how like many couples these days don't have kids, but like dogs become like a shared kind of love. So they kind of reflect a lot of what society, history, culture is living as part of that culture themselves. Which is kind of, again, like it's very interesting to see that, what they used to be like, work pals, like obviously that's another huge representation of dogs in art in the past, of like working dogs in in the fields, in factories. Now the domesticated dog is like their role is kind of being a member of the family, and they just guide kids into like some emotions when they're kids, and like learning to care for someone else, and obviously like there's so many richness. And but yeah, the important thing is that they do mirror what's happening in society.
Yeah, it's quite interesting you say that. As you were saying it, I had this light bulb moment. Well, number one is you could probably track artwork back with dogs for centuries and see the important things that were going on in that time with the like how people lived and everything. But what I also started thinking was this whole social media trend, which has hit the world over the last 20 years. You know, dog art is becoming about the dog a lot more, the individual dog, because of like all of these, Instagram pages and things like that, which is, I guess, probably a shift away from it being, just the companion of the human there. They're really kind of got their own stage now.
Yes, absolutely, and that is a perfect example of how things are changing with the role they have in in the context of a family or a community, and how yes they have become this playmate at the same time. They're becoming this like sidekick that you do things with that are beyond those kind of classic roles of protection or hunting or providing some sort of they're now becoming more of an equal in many things. Some people will probably worry that maybe the balance is sometimes a little bit out of whack. Obviously, like there's as many interpretations as dog owners and dog lovers. But yes, this kind of passion for dogs as like someone that you do actually see as a partner in crime, really. Those all those Instagram feeds are like love letters, really.
Yeah.
Like people are just falling in love with their dogs and like telling the world how much they, and in the way that some other people may show the food that they love. Or so it's actually very interesting, and we've actually published some pieces in the magazine of features of photographers and their Instagram feeds, and like the quality is fabulous. It's obviously there's a whole range, but there is real creativity and real art in some of those Instagram feeds.
Well, absolutely. I guess it's just another channel for that creativity to come out. It's easier for people these days to express their creativity through that platform when it would have been much more difficult to have that reach in the past. But it's interesting that you
Yeah.
mentioned like that dogs are becoming more of an equal, because that's something I've noticed in many industries, whether it's with food or whether it's with healthcare or whether it's with like the things we're talking about now, social media and having status. Dogs are accelerating towards where we are. mainly because their owners want to show them off, I think, though.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of like, and which is that's like some of the controversy. Like, I think that a lot of people that are not dog owners or dog lovers, they actually see it as like, come on, is this getting a bit too much? And to a degree, there is some moments that you kind of can cringe a little bit,
Mm.
and there's sometimes some things that are hard to understand. But even in the most eccentric of those scenarios, I have to say that there is, I would say most of the time, there's like such like there's real love behind it. So I have a lot of respect for, show their love, and even if I sometimes don't quite understand it.
It definitely comes from a place of love. So you've always got to think that. I mean, I'm one of those dog lovers that probably wants to show my dog off. So maybe I'm a little bit um, biased towards that. But anyway, so what does modern art or modern dog art look like? I guess traditionally people that aren't familiar with art or the creative side of art, they might think of it as a painting or something like that. But there's so many other, there's so many other outlets
Yeah.
for art, right? So what does modern dog art look like?
Well, I think there's a real like presence in photography. Maybe it's again because it's such an immediate kind of form. It's so accessible now for so many people. Like even an, a really good iPhone is gonna give you like amazing quality. There is a lot of what we see now is the creativity probably crosses more into the design side of creativity, but there is fabulous products and a lot of very interesting objects, very interesting accessories to actually make dog's life not, I wouldn't say different, but it's kind of like connecting more with like the aesthetic of the owner. That's a real push of that kind of design-led um, products. Photography is huge, as we were saying. Then there's probably more of a, regardless of the medium, there's probably more a shift on which are the themes that we see, what we were saying before, of, sort of like lighting, putting this kind of some light into issues that are a concern, like strays in like some societies, like how to, promote rescue instead of some types of, adoption over, breeding in like some instances. We're seeing explorations of themes of like obviously dog fights, like how, art is being used as a way to shine a light on some issues that are concerning. Obviously, it's also used as like to bring joy. That's another huge theme, and I guess that the way the world is at the moment, like a lot of people is finding like these little pockets of happiness with like art that's connected with dogs, and that kind of show us the humanity of being a dog lover or a dog owner.
Yeah, that's interesting. A couple of things that you mentioned there really resonated. I'm not having all these light bulb moments during this conversation, but
Right.
the objects or the personalization of like the household, like the home decor aspect, I think is something which is becoming more prevalent from a dog theme perspective. Like maybe little trinkets and things like that of dogs used to be a little bit maybe tacky, but now it's like they're getting refined and they're becoming more design focused. There's a lot more creative things out there with platforms like Etsy and things which have individual creators that can create things. And also as well, I guess
Yes.
you mentioned that art going towards a cause, and I think that's another trend in society in general, that people are with social media and everything, they can support causes and build momentum for causes. And the ones you mentioned are definitely prevalent in the dog space at the moment with the rescue side of things and reducing, cruelty and things like that. Absolutely.
Yes.
So no, you go on.
No, I was gonna say that is really good to see how there's the connection of like dog ownership is like connecting with some, which is probably always been there, but again, it's a bit like what we're saying with Instagram. The platforms now are there for people to connect and for people to be able to actually do something about it, and feeling, part of the community.
Yeah. So how do you go about telling, getting these messages across with the work that you do for Four&Sons? How do you tell the dog stories through your products and your publications?
Well, there's a bit of a mix in how we find stories. Sometimes we would, with a photographer, we will just think about some interesting concept that we would like to explore. Sometimes we get a lot of submissions of people that's been, channeling their creativity with different ways. Sometimes we the interviews with like creatives that are dog owners are always really, really interesting. That links back to what we're saying about like that you never quite know they get the full story. There's always something more to learn. There's always a different point of view, and kind of shows you that everyone's experience is like unique and valuable. And then it's just a matter of like, bringing everything together in a way that would be engaging, in a way that would make people sometimes look at dogs in a way that they never, not that they never thought about it, but they kind of, it's not probably the way that they thought it themselves. So that's always very exciting when people fall in love with an article because it made them rethink something, or the visual component is super strong for us. Like we are very curated in the way that we choose photography. We featured once this fabulous photographer, Mary Ellen Mark, who is like a magnum photographer. And she was saying how every Christmas she did this project where she would photograph dogs for their owners, and like how the difference between photographing something for someone and then trying to also find that image that's gonna capture something that is valuable for everyone. And that is kind of what we're aiming for, like something that would go past the owner and can represent something for everyone.
So there's not just the magazines though that you have as well. Like I know, like one particular thing which caught my attention immediately on your website is the pack of dogs. I'm not sure if that's released yet or is it's just been released. But it's like these representations of all these really famous artists, like Amy Winehouse and John Lennon and PJ Harvey and all these people as dogs, and it's just it's nothing like I've ever seen before, and I'm not sure if I've even explained it very well. But can you give me a little bit more information about that?
Yeah. So this is the first book that we just released from a new collection. So over all these years, we've met amazing artists. I mean, interesting people, interesting dogs, amazing creatives. And there's so many of the projects that we've featured that had more to them than just like the article, or they were just at the beginning. So for example, Pack of Dogs is a project with Michael Gillette. He's the illustrator in the project. And he started by just drawing, just kind of taking a dog, illustration of a dog, and then sort of like defacing it. And then one day, one of the dogs started to look like David Bowie. And he was like, oh my God, this is interesting. And then he started to draw all these iconic musicians as like their dog counterparts. But it's uncanny. I mean, if you've seen some of the things on the website, it is actually so beautiful how he has captured the essence of the musician.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. It's hard
Amy
to
Winehouse, like as a tuba, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's hard to explain, but as
Yeah.
you were just saying, then he's used props, I guess, like whether it's like an iconic way of dressing, or glasses, or a hairstyle,
Correct.
or a hat, or but
Correct.
those things are the obvious ones. But as you said, there's subtleties about their expressions that also kind of paint the picture of the star. It's quite amazing. I'd have to whoever's listening has got to go and check it out, I guess,
Yes.
to see, to see what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Michael himself says that every time he starts one of them, he's like at some point during the actual drawing process, he just is kind of hands in the air, kind of, this is madness, this is never going to work, and then at some point, but yeah, he's been really really sharp in the way that he's selected iconic sort of representations of the artist. So if you think about Kurt Cobain, you kind of think about him with a particular shirt and the T-shirt with like Daniel Johnston illustration on it. So that's kind of the iconic, like it's so ingrained in all of our unconscious kind of psyche that then by choosing those moments and bringing in that other element, everything just comes together. And they're really entertaining, and he's taken the time and he's put a lot of love in writing a little blurb, just a little kind of bit of copy that talks about his own personal connection to all of those musicians, which makes it even more poignant and more just engaging. So yes, we're super, super happy that this is the first one of a collection. So we're going to be publishing more and more books that are like I'm actually thinking that the next one probably just would be like a collection of photography that's like a competition between all of our readers. So kind of bring the best of all of those photographies, all of that beautiful images that we see on Instagram, to actually bring all that together and publish it in one book that represents. So like in 50 years time, when someone in like 2020, and what it did say about the moment we're all living in, which is kind of madness anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess art and publications like these and products like these, it really does tell a story about the time it was created. So I guess that's your part in this time, and it will last forever, which is a very cool thing to create. So Marta, to round things out, where can people find out more about Four&Sons and all the cool things we've just been discussing on the podcast? Is the best place to check out Instagram and also go four&sons.com?
Correct. Yeah. That's actually our the platforms that we kind of are more active in. So that's always going to lead people then into like our store if they want to check the magazines and the books. But on the website, they'll find a lot of interesting stories about like art and design and culture that is Dog-Centric. So yeah, the website, which is four&sons.com, and then at Four&Sons. And they can join us. They can have a look. Hopefully, they'll get some inspiration and they'll smile with all the beautiful things that we put together. Yeah.
Well, I can vouch for you because and having found you on Instagram and then checking out your website, I needed to have you on this podcast, and I absolutely loved our chat today. I highly recommend anyone go and look at it because it's so unique. And I spent a couple of hours on your website in preparation for this podcast, just kind of lost in all the amazing visuals and the stories and everything. So I'm sure other people will do the same. But thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your expertise about art and dogs and just sharing your story, because it was really fun, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, it was really, really enjoyable, and it's very nice to always get that reaction that people got a lot of inspiration and a lot of enjoyment out of what we're doing. Thank you. Thanks for the time.
That's a good. Thank you.